Today with me I have Mr. Suraj Rao, who is the Controller and Company Director, ETG, Ivory Coast. Welcome to WCC, sir.
Thank you.
A pleasure having you here.
Thank you.
What are your thoughts about the crop this year in IVC? How is the weather so far? And what are your predictions, sir?
Yeah, so this year the crop is going to be good. We are optimistic about the production figures. Last year we had a dry spell due to which there was a reduction in the crop. On an average, Ivory Coast produces 700,000 tons plus, whereas last year because of the severe harmattan there was a delay in the crop and we landed up around 650,000-670,000 tons. This year, right from the beginning of the year, the rainfall has been optimum and it has been well spread, which has been very conducive for the production of the crop. If we treat last year as an anomaly, given the trend, Ivory Coast has been growing, the crop has been growing at an annual rate of about 8%. So if we take 2014 as the base, we should see a crop which surpasses 700,000 tons, pushing towards 725,000 tons. The crop is expected to start by end of February. It's an early start, and it is expected to continue throughout the season and close at around the figure which I gave you, around 725,000 tons. Yeah.
Right. So as you were telling about the trends, do you think the ASEAN high prices trend is going to continue even in the season, or can we expect changes in the ASEAN price?
See, price is a function of both supply and demand. So if we look at demand figures, we feel that the demand is sustainable. We would not be looking at a scenario where we could go back to the historical lows. And of course, all this is, we are shooting bullets in the dark. It's just an estimate based on supply-demand data, based on discussions we have with the trade, based on discussions we have with the industry. We feel that supply and demand is going to be balanced, which means that current price levels with a 5% volatility in either direction should hold. So right now, we feel that Ivory Coast is being traded at levels north of $1,600, $1,650, and some trades have happened recently at $1,750. So there could be some small correction when a lot of crop flows into the supply chain, but overall we because of the minimum support price and because of good demand forecast, we don't foresee a large correction or a large downward trend in the market. So these price levels should hopefully sustain themselves.
So what are your thoughts about processing as well as increasing production and productivity in Ivory Coast? What are the steps taken by the government to improve that?
Yeah, so in terms of processing, we all know that Africa is the largest producer of the raw material. Processing has really not taken off. Various reasons are there for that, and one of the reasons is government support. However, the Ivory Coast government has developed a very, very good framework for supporting the industry. The framework is good, and now the next stage is the implementation of the framework. The government has incentives for export of kernel. They incentivize the processor to the extent of around $650 per ton of kernels exported. There is a progressive taxation which is going to happen on the raw nut exports, which also acts as a barrier towards exporting the raw material and an incentive to process.
Right.
And the government, under its Code de Investissement, which is the investment code, has got certain VAT and fiscal benefits to any investor who invests in the country in processing. So given these three verticals, if a company is properly structured and avails of the incentive, then processing becomes viable. In terms of policy, it is correct. It is not only enough to maintain a policy framework. There has to be policy implementation. So if the government moves in that direction, and they have the will and the ability to do so, because the Ivorian government has been very, very proactive in terms of their vision to transform a large percentage of their cashews by year 2020, and overall the country also wants to become an emerging economy by 2020. So to this extent, the policy is there. If they are able to implement it correctly, we could see a big spurt in processing in Ivory Coast.
And what are the steps taken there to improve the quality, with quality being the major concern all over?
Basically, the government in the past few months has run a lot of awareness programs. They have contacted cooperatives, groups of producers, and a lot of people on the ground have gone and done studies and educated the farmers in post-harvest practices. See, Ivory Coast cashew is basically good quality. It is the trade practice and the post-harvest practice, because the demand for IVC cargo is so high that the market tends to get overfunded, and because there is a lot of money chasing too few goods, it creates an inflationary scenario, and the product is pulled without proper treatment at the port. So this year the government has educated the farmer to properly dry the cargo, and the stakeholders, the exporters within the association have decided that they will try and reject humid cargo that is coming to the port, because once humid cargo reaches the port, it is bullet which is already fired from the gun. You can't do anything about it, and Abidjan per se cannot handle 700,000 tons of drying. Apart from that, the government has taken some measures to reject cargoes and seize the delivery note till such time that the cargo goes back to the bush, is dried and comes back. So this is a huge disincentive to the value chain to bring the cargo out from the bush without drying. So we hope that in terms of humidity, there will be better control this year, and if humidity is controlled, 90% of the problem of cashew quality is controlled. So hopefully this year, with the consciousness that of the exporters who suffered a lot over the past 2 years because of quality, and the steps taken by the government in terms of training program and the port disincentive to bring humid cargo, we should see improvement in quality this year.
Right, sir. So availability of finance, working capital is a big issue in IVC. How is it being addressed right now?
Most of the value chain is self-funded. Banking lines are few and far between. So most of the exporters work on trade advances, or they have bank funding from outside, or their own equity. However, over the past few years, local banks have stepped into the sector, are able to offer collateral management, financing under collateral management. They hypothecate the stock, take it under collateral management, and pay the exporter a certain percentage of the value of the goods when it arrives at the warehouse. So this tends to cut the cycle for the exporter, and they are able to increase their volumes. Where things could improve is in the cost. The cost of this collateral management structure is a little bit high. So if the banks are able to streamline the cost structure, and also the efficiency of documentation, because any collateral management structure that you take with the local bank, it's very slow. The documentation is onerous, and that the advantage that you get in terms of getting the finance early gets eaten up by the cycle time. So efficiency of operation as well as the cost of financing is two areas where the local banks could focus in order to ease the sector a little.
What are your expectations for next year?
WCC, as usual, it has been good. Singapore is a good venue. It has been a nice experience. The sessions have been pretty informative. It has set a trend in order to understand the future. Overall, it has been very informative. Overall, it has been very interactive, and every time I attend WCC, I always go back richer in terms of knowledge. So keep up the good work, and for the future, you could look at choosing a venue in Africa. Probably Ivory Coast is a good venue, largest producer of the world, and normally the WCC timing is in line with the start of the campaign in West Africa. So it would be a good idea to hold it in an African venue. So any support you want from us, we're always ready.
Thank you so much.